Welcome back if you were here earlier. I know we did our workshop and took a quick break, so thanks for sticking with us. But I do need to call this meeting to order. And it is, looking for Sarah, 7:02. Before I move on, friendly reminder that the exits are in the back. So the fire exits are in the back. And there's also one to my left that you can go out a ramp. So safety first. We'll move on to the agenda, and I need a motion to approve the agenda for the meeting. Mary Caitlin, Lisa, all in favor? Aye. And there are 6 of us. Next up, we would have had public comments. We were keeping it just in case, but we do not have any public comments today, so we will move on to our next item, which leads to the superintendent's report.
Ooh, this comes upon me really quick. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to say hello to everyone. Welcome. This will be our last summer gathering here, and next time we have a meeting, it will be all systems go. And I'm really excited to get our students and staff and our families and caregivers back into our buildings. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be superintendent as I enter my 9th year. We've been doing so many amazing things, and it's just such a joyful and experience and the privilege of a lifetime. We have a summer bright spot from Lindsay, her team of 1, and I think Kelly as well helped put this together. But it speaks to, just to give a flavor of the great things that we've been doing in our district this summer as we prepare for the upcoming school year. And so I think our friend Luke is going to hit play, and we're going to share the video. Thank you. Ceiling, it was working this afternoon when we were in here.
Did you share
That is the nature of technology right there.
Yeah, you probably. How about this? Go back and start over, and I'll play it from here, and it'll be. Turn on my microphone. Give it a shot. Start over. Tell me when you're going to do it. We'll do on the count of 3. This is too good to. You know what they say, the show must always go on. So, boy, that was lucky, total luck. I found that one. But thank you Lindsay, I really appreciate the work that you do behind those bright spots. Lots of hours for 3 minutes of, again, lots of joy, lots of energy. And we're getting ready from a physical plant standpoint. If you go to our schools, which we're going to be talking about in a little bit, it might be hard to reconcile that, but we're confident that we're on the right track, as the board just learned in the workshop, and we'll be taking a tour in a week or so you can see how it all comes together. But just as exciting and just as important, Luke, do you have the slideshow? Everyone's getting back in the school shape. You gotta. There you go. So, Fairport for the Future. That was the 2019 project that we were looking at. This is coming up on August 8th. We had close to 600 school members, students, some staff, community members visiting our facilities to see how we envision the future for our library, for our tech wing, for our track, so many of our students use. There were so many participants, great energy, and again, it was summertime, and we had 600 people there, right? And that was exciting. We're looking forward to doing it all over again, September 20th. And again, it's about information sharing. It's about generating some excitement so people can see and feel the vision, so they can experience the learning spaces right now. Well, why do we need a renovated library? Well, come to Fairport High School and find out, why do we need tech classrooms? And seeing it is compelling, and then seeing the vision behind it. We're really targeting our K-8 community, because I believe our 6th graders will be the first group that goes through it, and we're on the right path, in 2026-27 for that merger to occur, and we have an October 12th capital improvement project, which we're looking forward to bringing the community out so they can have their voice in our process. I have a clicker. That's usually me. So we have facilities planning. So we have projects, and I think that's so important that we continue to talk and communicate all the things that we're doing in our school outside of the capital improvement project, because our staff said very eloquently and very clear that, hey, we still have needs in our buildings. And we met July 26th with a group of stakeholders and talked about facility needs. What do they need? What do they want us to do as we continue to move forward, as we create learning environments? And we got some real practical advice. We're looking forward to talking to our Board of Education periodically. This year we'll be giving accountability reports that speak directly to the board about all the maintenance requests, all the things that we've been able to accomplish, and how we're using our general fund dollars to work through the maintenance and upkeep of our facilities. And that's directly related to our strategic plan. Wherever I could put the strategic plan in there, we will, because that's the board's promise to the community, and I look forward to engaging with our principals. They're going to be having site management meetings throughout the year, and that pretty much says, what are the priorities from a mechanical, from a physical plant? What are the things that we need to do to keep our facilities moving along and engaging and friendly for the time being until we can get to future capital improvement projects. Yeah, this isn't working from here, so yeah. Try it again. Well, thank you. Oh, one more. Oh, it doesn't matter. I'll keep going. I'm good. All right, because I am resilient. All right, I am ready to go. I could do this. So, that's weird. Well, I was in school today, right? And I don't need pictures. Put that all away. There's something happened with my report. I don't know, but I was here today, and we saw close to 200 educators. And they were here at what was called Teach Fest, a powerful opportunity for our educators to come and work with each other, to engage in best practices, teaching and learning. Literally 200 educators, they didn't have to be here, right? And they had an amazing keynote speaker, Carl Hooker, who we're going to continue to do all sorts of work with as we move forward that speaks about learning, engaging students, all students, every learner. I was proud to see that. Also, another sign of the times is we have, I don't know, something, don't worry about it, guys, it's over. I'm going with it. Yeah, I don't know what happened. We had our new teachers in. We were able to welcome about 30 of our new teachers, and they're energized and excited to start and making important contributions to our schools. Day 187, which we talked about, all of our teachers have learned about MTSS, the MTSS framework, and how it's going to impact their work. We're talking about quality teaching and taking care of the social and emotional needs of our students in the classroom. There's professional learning occurring this past summer on that very topic, which the board just learned about, and we're excited that we're going to continue to build upon that through this year. So the year is upon us. We're excited to welcome all students back. We have all of our fields and classrooms outside. We call those fields classrooms, right? It's great to see the fall sports here. That fall season is here, and that's another sure sign that we're ready to go. So thank you very much. And next time I'm going to bring a hard copy too. So I thank you very much.
Never a dull moment. That's okay. So next we're on the president's report, and I'm not going to talk super long. I'm going to just feed off of some of the stuff that Brett said, but the countdown to students is here. I know that all the primary students have had their teacher assignments. It was exciting to see all the posting on social media, kids finding out who would be their teacher and their friends, but they're not there in their classes, and of course they'll make new friends. I forgot how exciting that is for kids. Mine are older, so it was fun to see that out there for sure. Also, again, excitement. The high school and Minerva also got their schedules today. I didn't realize how excited my kids, one of them at least, was excited to see what his schedule would look like at Minerva, and I think some of the other board members have students that also were waiting to find out what their schedule looked like this morning. So thanks to multiple people that pulled together the schedules and got it out to our students. Lastly, the middle schools are later.
They're up next.
They're up next, and they're later. So I'm sure they're just waiting on edge to find out what it looks like for the
I
upcoming
hear
year.
there's like sleepover parties. There's like reveal parties, right? Which is kind of
Very fun. Yeah. I did just in terms of the new teachers, a few of us did have the opportunity to go to the new staff orientation for teachers and welcome them into our district, which was very exciting. I think we'll be able to learn from them as they'll be able to learn from us as well. And Peter brought up a great comment. He mentioned at that. I think every one of the board members this year actually have a student within the school district. And I don't know when that has happened in the past. So just happy that we probably have a variety of perspectives here. Additionally, I just wanted to thank all the folks, teachers, staff that have been working all summer. I used to be a teacher, and I always got the comment, "You're so lucky you have all summer off." The reality of that is usually not that you actually have the whole summer off. During summer vacation, most of our teachers and staff are prepping, they're doing training, they're doing curriculum writing. Many teach summer school as well, but you know, school is not far from their minds if they're not physically in the building. So just recognizing that. Additionally, I'm hoping that our teachers and staff, our paras, people working in the offices, our counselors, did have some time to rest, reflect, and recharge over the past few weeks, which hopefully they don't forget about that time when they're getting back in the groove. Additionally, we did have the chance to meet with our 12-month employees. So again, a school district is busy all the time. We're going to see a presentation on the construction that's been taking place, but additionally, we've had folks all summer working to prepare within the buildings, and we were able to have lunch with our 12-month employees last week, which I loved. I know Peter was there, and I'm trying to see anybody else. anybody else made it. But it was great to meet with those folks and kind of learn about, do they have kids that are here? What did they do when they're not at school working? And just making those connections. So it was really nice. And they're ready to go. Aaron, who is in charge of buildings and grounds and oversees many different things, has made the comment to me, and he made it during our workshop earlier, that he feels very prepared, the most prepared he has felt, knock on wood, for school to open. So thanks for all the hard work that was done this summer, and we're excited, ready to go. Which leads us to board comments.
I think, is this committee, or is that at the, okay, sorry, we had moved things, I got confused. Okay, so we had our first sustainability committee meeting of the year. Very exciting. We are going to be working towards kind of fostering and engaging the green teams that exist, and then in buildings that don't currently have a green team, offering our support. And they had previously kind of laid it out that the green team quote unquote format, it's not really a format, but would work towards a community service project, a legislative action, and that could be writing postcards, writing letters, like something simple. And then what was the third tenet? But it was just really education. It's just really focused on student-led activism in building awareness of sustainability measures. So it's just really exciting that that's kind of going to be the drive to build up and have it be student-led and student-initiated. And then policy is underway. We had our meeting yesterday for 3 hours, and we dove into a bunch, and we're on a great track to keep up the policy updating.
And just to bounce off of the sustainability, thanks to everyone who helped out and who donated, and all the kids and students who helped out with the school supply drive, the second year that we've done that. That was at the library earlier this month. Just a wonderful event, just a really great thing that we do to help families, to help all families, and to help keep stuff out of landfills. And also worth noting that all of the leftover stuff that wasn't picked up at the drive is being donated to Learning Links, and so it is getting to students and families through that organization.
I was just going to mention that if anyone, we talk about committees that the board is on, and we are all on a variety of committees, both within the district and with the county. And you can always look on the website if you're curious what we are working on when we're not here and not in workshops and all the other fun stuff. So take a look.
So I'm going to ask a board member to speak about UPK because I missed that. So I'm going to give you a nice volley to that.
Okay, so we had a meeting this afternoon actually to begin the process of establishing a UPK vision statement and mission statement for our new UPK, well not new, but our expanding UPK program. So Mary Caitlin and I, as well as Dr. T and Kelly Weishar and Lisa Benson, is that correct? Our new MTSS director, were able to get together and put together a first draft, and we're really excited about the vision that we have that's really prioritizing multifaceted in all the domains for our children, that's play-based and really incorporates family involvement and prioritizes that for our district. Does that answer your question, Brett?
Perfect.
Okay. And just to kind of expand off that, it's kind of a really powerful thing because we have UPK housed in a lot of different settings, and this is kind of saying like this is what we want to have achieved in those different settings with our families and our community partners. So it kind of keeping us all moving our littlest people forward.
And also, I was able to go to part of Teach Fest today to most of the keynote speaker, and just a really great opportunity, great energy among the faculty and the staff that were there. And in addition to being just great content, I also was impressed by the communication and the organization. It just seemed like overall a really well-run event. So shout out to, I think it's Jenna Platt, Nate Reuter, and Travis Wood for their work on that, which is really great environment today.
Another example of doing work during the summer. So thank you. And I forgot to mention, I did ask Brett just to confirm, we do have around 175 folks that work in the district year-round. So just recognizing that when students are gone, it doesn't mean that the buildings aren't still humming. Okay, I think, are we good? Okay, we're going to move on to our presentations. And first up, we have a presentation on the 2019 Capital Improvement Project. Thank you for being here.
Kevin, do you want this right here?
Oh.
Kevin Arletta from Campus Construction's here to give his monthly report on how we're doing.
Yes, good evening. Here is our capital improvement project update, both phases 1A and 1B for the month of July. So just a quick look at our overall referendum. These are the different components that make up the 56,750. It's everything from our state contracts, prime contracts, incidental budget, construction contingency, and high school finishes project. A closer look into the budget based on contractor pay applications. We're approximately 90% complete with the project, so we're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel there. To date, the district has approved just over 3.2 million in change orders, leaving us just over 355 in the contingency. We currently have just shy of $100,000 left in allowances. So just a quick look at the overall phase 1A here at the high school. Big project highlights here. And again, this was really over in the gymnasium here at the high school where we had the painting work going on that has just been wrapped up. The floor finishing is beginning tomorrow, and that'll carry through the start of the school year there. Then switching over to the high school finishes project. Again, this project included wall tile, lockers, and terrazzo. Completed the lockers, wrapping up the wall tile currently, and some of the terrazzo work we'll be pushing into the school year. Over at 1B, this summer our contractors have been mainly focused over at JP, Dudley, and Northside. You'll see photos later here in the presentation of those main offices and JP's boiler room. And then the Smart Schools project, our controls contractor's been working through on the phase 2 buildings, and that work will continue through the fall here. So just an quick look at project schedule. So starting here at the high school and the gymnasium, going to be continuing the floor refinishing process in there. For the finishes projects, again, that is the corridor terrazzo there. Be continuing pouring and placing terrazzo and then starting to begin grinding on B shift during the school year. And then over at 1B, Northside, Dudley, and JP, those main offices, we're currently working on finishes, having furniture being delivered here. We're continuing the MEP connections in the boilers, as well with the main entrances there, getting the vestibule wall tile in place, and then wrapping up the finishes in the classrooms over at JP. So here's a look at the high school second floor corridor. You can see some of the terrazzo layout with the zinc strips. And here's after the terrazzo is placed. We have our first coating of the terrazzo in the remainder of that corridor. Again, that work will continue through. In the high school gymnasium, you can see the painting work going on here. Again, it was all of the walls, structural steel, and deck in that space. It really has livened up that space with a fresh coat of paint. Switching over to the 1B schools, you can see the Dudley main office conference room here. Fresh paint, ceiling, lights, carpet. Switching over to the north side main entrance. Again, this will all be ready in place for school with some finish work occurring after school on off hours, but all the safety and security measures will be in place for the start. And then just adjacent to that is the corridor terrazzo, where they're continuing grinding work. And then over in JP's main office, here's a shot of the floor leveler. They have this floor going in currently. And then a look at the toilet room, just adjacent down the hall, finishing up the tile work in there. And here's a shot at one of the classrooms that we replaced the flooring in, total of 15 there. And then here's a look at the technology classroom space that will be continuing through the school year, but wrapped up shortly in, excuse me, in October. And then just outside that space, you can see the new dust collector for the tech space. Are there any questions?
Mine would be based on numbers. Surprise. The incidental budget, we don't talk necessarily about it much. The contingency budget has tracked well, right? 90% done, 90% spent. Is incidental been sufficient? Or are we looking at maybe any extras in incidental? Maybe that's more for Matt.
Yeah, Matt, why don't you?
Yeah, so right now, both contingency and incidental budget, we've been tracking those. We meet on those, right now during the project a little more often. The campus and I will get together and kind of look at those different pieces, but both tracking as expected overall. We do have, as you see back on one of the initial slides, there's funds available for construction, so we still do have we're looking at other pieces, as we've talked at many meetings, like art rooms at the high school. But those we are safely tracking right now as we proceed through the tail end of the project. A lot of the big pieces for unanticipated items that have come up, we've gotten through most of those major items. That anything else should be fairly minor, as we have any change order work that we may come across. So that.
So inflationary pressures haven't pushed us too far to the limit, or?
No, because really those pressures only come up if you have change order work. So that's when those will come in place. Otherwise, the base contract work is already in place and priced out. So it's only if we have something that's identified, when in a space that would make that space more efficient or productive for the users in that space.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
And next, we have the 2023 capital improvement project.
Mr. Stevens, thank you for coming up. We're going to try to walk through this. Many of this may sound repetitive, but that's good because, we have a plan. We're sticking to the plan, and, there shouldn't be any new information or surprises at this point. We're here to present our Fairport for the Future, both phases here, phase 1 and phase 2. As everybody knows, this fall, on October 12th, 2023, there'll be a referendum taking a look at both propositions, which we're going to review, Proposition 1 and Proposition 2. We're going to review the scope of both of those projects in this presentation and how the board has talked to us about minimizing the impact and how we did that by using reserves, the tax impact, right? There's this process called seeker. We're going to review the seeker. That's going to be good information to share and process. You have opportunities to ask questions on the seeker and hear the details about the environmental review, which we're required to do. And then we're going to have an interactive process. You're going to ask questions, and we'll talk about our next steps. That's the essence of what we're talking about here. This timeline, we created this timeline, I think, in February, and it's really cool that it's coming to fruition. We're here on August 22nd, like we paced out, and it's a very important Board of Education meeting to talk about the scope and the seeker resolution. We've talked about how we've been engaging the community with community events. We did one on August 8th, and we'll do one, and we anticipate doing one on September 20th. We can't wait to get community members out here to review what we're trying to accomplish and experience the high school and the needs that it has and how it can be an opportunity for our students and for our greater community. If necessary, we will continue to do public information meetings. We're sending out flyers, mailers, all sorts of information using social media, the commentator, really have an aggressive approach to get the word out, and what the options will be for our community, which we will review. And you'll see October 12th is important because that's going to inform how we move forward with contingency dollars, with different spaces as we move along. The first proposition, before I let Mr. Stevens come in and take us through that, we are passionate about modernizing our learning environments for the single purpose of it adds enthusiasm. It creates learning spaces that are conducive to learning and sharing and engaging. There's also a community expectation after the December referendum, which failed, of no additional local impact to the community. That was a board priority. And we believe we were able to achieve that, as we'll explain. A long priority of our strategic plan is to consolidate district properties. That includes relocating staff from Balmer Place to Martha Brown and Minerva DeLand. We're going to talk about how that's going to be achieved, and eventually the sale of Balmer Place. Those are the goals of Proposition 1. Mr. Stevens is going to walk you through some of the main features.
Thank you, Mr. Provenzano. So the next few slides will talk about the features of Proposition 1, the work at Fairport High School and Martha Brown. So here you see kind of a brief summary. As mentioned, in the previous slide, one of the big goals is preparing Fairport High School for the merger of Minerva DeLand students over to Fairport High School. We've done that in the 2019 capital project, along with really, much needed improvements to the building as a whole. But also you'll see some of the pieces here. You see a STEM addition, so science, technology, engineering, and math. That would be an addition onto the building to account for classrooms needed, as well as upgrade our space. We've done some tours and looking at our technology spaces and seeing how antiquated those spaces really are for the programs that we have as a district. Library reconfiguration, as well as some classrooms utilizing current library space. You'll see a hallway when you get to one of the diagrams in terms of how that space is being parsed out a little bit differently for long-term usage. Health, phys ed, athletic administrator space, some light renovations in that area, special ed space, collaboration spaces, parking and improvements, site work, the tennis courts relocation to allow for parking. And you'll see this on the additional slides as we go through. So here's an overall look at the site. So in the yellowish colors where the addition would be onto the high school, and that's the STEM addition. A key piece to that, why a STEM addition? Because the state will provide some building aid for that type of addition and improvement for the district. They don't just provide aid for any types of classroom additions. STEM is a specific area that they will provide that for on a one-time basis. So that's very important to this process as well.
Can I jump into that? You're 100% correct about the aid, but I invite everybody to come September 20th to see what our technology spaces look like today. They're the same spaces that our students used in 1970. Program has changed, needs have changed. Maker spaces are on the scene right now, and I think you would be impressed with how our staff and our students make it work, and comparably to what is necessary for the next steps in our Fairport facilities plan. Sorry.
No, that's a great addition. It's like, as you mentioned, it's really looking at our current antiquated spaces, and it just is an added bonus that the state provides aid on the tech space. We also have a partnership with BOCES. We're able to utilize BOCES for some of the career and tech ed programs that we provide to our students. So it's all couples together in our long-range programmatic plan. And then you see the tennis courts over between the stadium field and the multi-use turf field. So it's a relocation from where they currently exist, where you see parking indicated here in the diagram. So it's increasing also important from a athletic program standpoint, 5 courts to 7 courts. So in talking with the users of the site and the program, it's important to be able to host additional events as a district. And then again, you see the additional parking. That's to accommodate the staff and parking that we would need at Fairport High School. Also adding some accessible parking for closer to the fields right now. Right now we utilize some spaces in the existing lot to meet those requirements. But this would provide that dedicated space for accessible parking for our users. Inside the building, as mentioned, the STEM edition in red, and then in blue is primarily the library space. And over on the far left-hand side of the screen is light renovation to the athletic administration space and some current tech areas to create classroom space for the move. Then upstairs, just corresponding spaces to where work taking place downstairs within the project. Get another look at the library. You can see on the far right-hand side of the diagram, 3 classrooms. So that's increasing the classroom space. You know, we look at a space utilization study, enrollment, all those different pieces in forecasting long-term. It's identified that 3 additional classrooms would be needed during the process of merging the 2 buildings. These just a couple of concepts within the library. Then a closer look at the STEM edition. More concepts of the tech space in terms of how we could have space designed to meet our current programs. And then an exterior look at the building. Here's overall timeline for construction. So again, if the project is approved in October of 23, then we have the design phase of the project submitted to the State Education Department. Once we receive approval, we go through the bid process. But once bids are awarded, then we have the construction timeline you see in yellow. So approximately a 3-year timeline for 2 to 3 year timeline for construction. Overall, to have students prepared to move into to Fairport High School from Minerva DeLand in the fall of 2026, so the 26-27 school year. There will be some ongoing work for the project itself that stretches into 27, but that move will be able to take place in 26. And here's the site work as well as STEM edition construction schedule. And now the next, do you want me to continue? Good? Okay, perfect. Next piece, as mentioned earlier in the slides, part of the long-range planning, goal 3 of the project is to prepare the district for the ability to be able to consolidate our buildings. So once students are moved out of Minerva DeLand, the construction work is completed over at Martha Brown, we would then be able to look at moving current staff at Balmer Place into both Martha Brown and Minerva DeLand. Once moved out, we then would proceed with the sale of Balmer Place. Here's some of the work over at Martha Brown to take place. Again, just some light renovation work in some downstairs areas over, for 12-month offices at Martha Brown, as well as on the very end of the building, some PD space that does have outside window access as a whole in that space as well. So looking to recreate some of the tech space into some professional development space that can be used year-round. This slide just highlights some of the sustainability. We've had our architects in here talking about, many of the pieces, our construction management team. For some of the pieces in the capital project that we look at, again, energy efficiencies, low VOC paints, adhesives, LED lighting, we've seen that go in throughout this entire capital project and the 2019 project. The flooring that we use with the terrazzo, longevity of such flooring, the chemicals to clean, all those different pieces are factors, and as well as our HVAC system. So we continue to install controls in our heating, ventilation, air conditioning systems that will help us from an efficiency standpoint long-term as a district. I talked a little bit about the HVAC equipment already, but again, just highlighting some of the pieces that, we look at through capital projects. Next is the cost summary. So Proposition 1 cost summary before we get into Proposition 2. Again, the key piece here was to utilize capital building reserve dollars to reduce the impact down to an additional $0 additional impact after capital reserve dollars and then the state building aid coming in. So you can see total project of $36.35 million. Our building aid ratio as a district right now 78.9%. The bond ratio that you see, bond percentage up here, is the amount of the project that's aidable. So we look at, in any capital project planning, we look at our cost allowances that the state sets at our school buildings. We see what aid's available and work to maximize the building aid to be received back. So about 72% of the project is aidable at our building aid rates. Looking to use $18.86 million of our capital building reserves. And that you'll see right in the proposition resolution for where those funds are coming from. That ultimately decreases our borrowing. So by decreasing the borrowing down to $17.49 million, with interest, our total principal and interest payments of about $24.7 million, and then our state building aid to flow at that 15-year period at the same dollar amount. So the state will aid us for reconstruction projects over a course of 15 years. And that's how our debt is lined up, so that that payment of principal and interest netted out with the state building aid results in that zero additional impact on the tax levy. And then just a pie graph of the funding sources for the project.
So that was Proposition 1. Is there any questions on Proposition 1? We were committed to staying with Proposition 1. And the one thing that's wonderful about the board is how accessible and open to feedback they are. Students, families, community members came out and talked about the need for a Proposition 2, right? And that's a track and field facility. And there, I think in the months of April, May, and June, there was lots of activity, lots of advocacy, packed rooms full of student athletes, coaches, family members, past and present. The most impressive thing that our athletes were saying, and I think that really resonated with the board, was there's 150 students per year who participate in track. All students can participate. Everybody could be successful based upon where they are and how they experience track. But what was even more impressive is they weren't advocating for themselves. They were advocating for younger generations. And I think that spoke to where their hearts were. And they were the experts, and the board listened intently. But we really needed to do it in a fiscally responsible way that didn't change, right? And we needed to make sure, and as we invite families to come see the track, we give them tours of the track. I just did a interview this afternoon, and it was right out on the track. The Primetime 585 wanted to meet and talk about the track, and was showing the track and how it impacts our student athletes. We need an equitable, accessible, safe, and modern facility. Our students were telling us that. And not only were our students saying it, many of our community members, their families, community members like past alum would come and speak to us about the expectations for track. Our community uses the track. You walk around, or you'll see that happening right now. And you'll see, as part of the referendum of Phase 2, or Proposition 2, an 8-lane track. Right now there's 6. We can't hold invitational or sectional track meets here in Fairport. Think about that, not being able to, play out your senior year or your experiences in an antiquated track. There's going to be grandstands. Right now there are no grandstands. Accessibility to our track has been pointed out many different times. It's lacking. It's not really accessible. It's not friendly. We envision a facility that would be housing at least 800 fans and family members alike, community members. Scoreboard with PA system, high jump, steeplechase, right? These are standards. These are the standard things that occur. We haven't been able to do that in Fairport. We've had to experience all sorts of success. We have state qualifiers, competitive runners, and they're successful, and we don't even have this on site. Long jump, triple jump, shot put, discus storage buildings, right, to make sure that we have the right facilities. The main features of the proposition, again, said it earlier, but hosting multi-team invitationals, grandstands with a press box, increased track area, storage building. Again, these are investments. The storage building is a necessity. Community access to the track. And again, here are some of the sustainability pieces of the new track, using the latest technology to support on-site storm water management, low VOC, low emitting coatings, that's on the track surface. Recycled materials will be there, making sure that we're trying to be as sustainable as possible. We're committed to doing a study on the feasibility of adding EV charging stations. And hopefully, as we continue to try to find and maximize aid opportunities, those will come together. So that will be part of this project. Thank you to our partners at Labella. And reduce the on-site soil import and disposal. So sustainability is on our mind and how we can try to maximize it within the body of this project. Here it is in view of a timeline starting in the spring of 2025. You'll see new tennis courts starting to evolve in 2025 with the new additions. Then you're going to see a new track and field start in the summer of 2025 and go to fall of 2026, right? So we'll continually talk about this timeline if we continue to move in this direction. But these have been the ideas we've been talking about for the past several months. Mr. Stevens.
Okay, thank you. So next, just to talk about the cost impact of Proposition 2. So overall project, referendum of 9.48 million. Again, our building aid ratio 78.9, 0% bond percentage. So this project not receiving building aid back on it is, again, maximize the dollars in Proposition 1 to keep that at a zero additional local impact after those reserves. Utilizing what basically we have left in our capital reserve for the most part of 1.6 million. To reduce that principal borrowing down to 7.88 million, interest of 3.2 for total debt of 11.1 million on that project. Over a course of 15 years, it's about a 740,000 and change annual impact, or about $39 a year on a $200,000 home. So that's under 1% on our levy overall. So you can see the balance between Proposition 1 and 2 and the two impacts of each project there. So the next steps with us tonight in the front row, we've got some partners from campus in Labella. You all know Kevin Arlotta. We have Ben Schmidt from Labella, Dan Peters from Labella, and Francis Cabot from Labella. And Francis is going to do a quick review of the state environmental quality review process and results, as you'll see a resolution on the further on in the board agenda. So with that, we want to jump into the seeker review process.
Thank you for that introduction. Capital improvement projects like this project are subject to the seeker review. A seeker review requires completion of the environmental assessment form. This is 3 forms, parts 1, 2, and 3. The part 1 form provides information regarding the scope of the project and includes specific questions about the proposed project's potential environmental impacts. The full environmental assessment form, part 1, which is shown on the screen, was completed for this project and was circulated to potentially interested involved agencies. These agencies were put on notice about
the school district's intention to serve as lead agency for the purpose of the seeker review. As lead agency, the school district is responsible for preparing the seeker documentation for this project. None of the potentially interested or involved agencies objected to the school district's intent to serve as lead agency. The next step of the seeker review process is completion of parts 2 and 3 of the environmental assessment form. So these are two separate forms. Part 2 of the environmental assessment form is used to identify environmental impacts which may result from the proposed action. Labella completed a draft of this form which identified several potential environmental impacts for the proposed project. On to Part 3. Part 3 of the environmental assessment form evaluates the magnitude and the importance of potential environmental impacts identified in the Part 2 form. Labella drafted a narrative addendum evaluating the small environmental impacts identified in the Part 2 environmental assessment form. I realize that sounds like a bunch of gobbledygook probably to everybody in the audience here. You know, it's seeker, it's not for everybody. It can be a bit dry, let's face it. Today, what I think I will probably focus most of my time speaking about were the small impacts that were identified in the Part 2 form. And the way that the seeker review works is essentially the Part 2 form is sort of like a checkbox. You're looking at, checking yes for category if you can check a small impact, a moderate impact, or large impact. And basically what this means is you could say yes to, you can answer yes to a question. And anyone that is familiar with the form will realize that not all the questions necessarily are applicable to the project. In this case, I won't waste your time going through the specifics of every single question in the Part 2 form, but I think it's important for you to know that the Part 2 form informs Part 3. And Part 3 is the determination of significance, either a neg deck or a pos deck. As I mentioned in this case, the Part 2 form that was filled out for this project by Labella identified small environmental impacts in several categories. So I'm going to go through the items that were identified, and I also want you just to take these with a grain of salt to a certain extent. And the reason I'm saying this is that because I think it's kind of hard to explain some of these impacts a little bit outside of the context of the project. A lot of times, again, I mentioned that the Part 2 form has a number of items that are sort of checkbox items that are just identify this. Can you say yes to this question or no to this question? And really, we're really looking at, for this project, the main issues were impacts to land, impacts to surface water, impacts to animals and plants, impacts to historic resources, impacts on energy, impacts on noise and light, and impacts on human health. So those are the categories that I'm going to go through right now. So, as I mentioned, on the Part 2 form, the yes box was checked for the impacts on land category. And the following small impacts were noted. The project may involve construction on some land with slopes are 15% greater. Now the project, the only project site that will have any physical alteration is the high school campus site. And approximately 10% of the high school campus site, this is the entire site, has slopes of 15% or greater. So we determined that that was a small impact. The next item that we generally wanted to discuss was, due to the ground disturbance at the Fairport High School, the proposed ground disturbance, a stormwater pollution prevention plan will be prepared. A speedy general permit for stormwater discharges associated with construction activity will be obtained for the project. So that's the discussion on impacts to land. Moving on to impacts on surface water and the flooding categories. The proposed action creates a stormwater management pond at the Fairport High School. A large impoundment is not anticipated. Additionally, All mapped state and federal wetlands and streams that were flagged by the New York State DEC environmental mapper at the various campuses and identified in the Part 1 EAF are outside of any project areas where construction activities will occur. So in a nutshell, while the DEC has mapped wetlands on the various project sites, project construction activities, meaning project construction activities at the high school, won't impact these wetlands. I also mentioned previously that a stormwater pollution prevention plan was going to be prepared for the project and that a speedies permit would be obtained. Stormwater will be managed via ditches, pipes, swales, curbs, and will be directed on-site stormwater management structures. Finally, while none of the proposed project sites are located within the 100-year floodplain or the 500-year floodplain, the proposed project could impact drainage patterns to a small extent. As previously noted, any stormwater runoff will be directed to on-site stormwater management structures. Moving on to the next category.
Can we ask questions around that?
Oh, sure.
Because I'm just thinking of the track, right? So Proposition 2, should it pass, there is that steep ravine in between the first part of our property and where the track is now. Is that anticipated to be filled in?
Yes.
Yep, and so that's where some of this starts coming into play in terms of drainage. We don't want to flood our neighbors behind if it's filled in one direction, right? And so all those things are part of this planning, and the seeker's taking that into consideration. Right.
The track will have internal drainage, so the parameters rain will help capture that and control it. Thank you, sorry about that. We'll share this. The track will have internal drainage. The track itself will drain off to the side inboard. There's a perimeter gutter drain that'll pick up that drainage, and then it'll move the drainage through what Francis was describing as the drainage system, which is all underground except for there is an open pond.
Yep.
And we always have neighbors next to our property here who are
Right.
concerned about any time and rightfully so, but that seems
Right.
like a big area, right? If you fill in a ravine,
Right.
obviously the water that will back up on the other side of it.
Yeah.
And I
all our
think-
Sorry.
In terms of ravine, do you mean like where the hill goes down?
Yeah, it goes
Yeah,
down
and I think that would be regraded, right? Because
Right.
the track itself would be closer, so I think some of the field events would be in that area, so it couldn't have that huge.
That's what I mean, right? That's what I
Yeah.
mean. It needs to be
Yeah.
filled. And
Yeah.
so now you've really altered the way the water drains in that area.
Our whole design has to get approved by the state. The state won't allow you to shed water off of your property. You have to control the quality of it and the quantity of it, which means, Ben does calculations based on volume, and it's all got to get, triple sets of eyes on it to control that. So that's the whole process. We have to hold our water internally and then control it.
I would think it might actually improve it.
Well, but that's the comment I want here for neighbors to hear. right,
Yeah.
By having
Right.
this in public
Yeah.
is
Right.
I
it's being
agree.
considered, it's being planned. You said triple eyes, it's being
Right.
calculated by
Yeah.
volume. We are not allowed to shed water. I've
That's
heard that from
correct.
other projects, and so
Right.
we're taking the steps to make sure whatever drainage we take care of now, we are going to meet, hopefully, maybe exceed, I don't say hopefully, but possibly, but we're gonna at least meet and make sure it drains not onto our neighbor's property.
That's correct.
Yeah, thanks.
I'm
Thank you,
hoping it
Francis.
improves it, yeah.
Well, thank you for that explanation. I think that, that was very helpful. And as I mentioned, the project is actually going to be getting a speedies permit from New York State DEC. So the, questions regarding stormwater and in-drain drainage will also be evaluated by New York State. So the next category that I'd like to move on is impacts on plants and animals. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service flagged the northern long-eared bat as a species which may occur on or near the project site. It is not anticipated that the project would impact this species because DEC's environmental resource management records do not indicate that the town of Parenton or the village of Fairport contain northern long-eared bat habitat. Additionally, no tree removal is proposed as part of the proposed project. According to the New York State DEC Environmental Resource Mapper, Hart's Woods, which is an undeveloped beech maple oak forest, is a significant natural community and it's located in close proximity to the Minerva DeLand School campus. However, only interior renovations are proposed at this campus, so there's going to be no site work. So Hart's Woods will not be impacted by the project.
Yeah, maybe clarify that.
Okay, sure.
Seeker review may have involved a larger category as we were planning for overall projects, but no construction is planned at Minerva DeLand. So,
And I'll just clarify, when we performed the seeker review, we still reviewed that project area because there were going to be renovations of the building. So, thank you for that clarification. There won't be any physical, or rather, site work at that project. It's only going to be interior renovations. Did I screw that up?
it's okay. Just to clarify, back when we were doing seeker review, because that process has to start long in advance before we fully identified project scope. So at the time, we tried to encompass areas that could have been included in the project, which at that time could have included Minerva DeLand. However, when we narrowed down scope for the project itself is focused on Fairport High School and Martha Brown, so there's no work at all at Minerva DeLand. So I apologize. When we go through the review, we wanted to try to cover as much as we could in a review. But
Can I
there's
add a little? Yeah, when
once seeker's done, you can't add
Right.
scope at other
Yeah,
buildings.
better to put more into the review than less. We're not trying to, our tolerances are pretty big, so we want to have big tolerances, and things move all the time, and so we studied more than actually is in the scope.
It's okay. No, thank you for that clarification. I appreciate it. Moving on, now that we know that that's not an issue, moving on, the next category that was checked yes was impacts on historic and archaeological resources. Several of the project sites are located in close proximity to the Thomas Holbert House, the Wilbur House, and the Potter Historic District. However, the proposed project does not involve any alteration in any of these historic structures or any structures located within the historic district. Additionally, all the school buildings included in the project have been previously evaluated and determined to be ineligible for historic listing. The State Historic Preservation Office issued a letter stating that no properties, including archaeological or historic resources, listed or eligible for the New York State and National Registers of Historic Places will be impacted by this project. Moving on to impacts in energy, the proposed action will generate additional demand for energy due to the STEM addition at Fairport High School. Energy would be supplied by Fairport Electric. The proposed action would not require a new substation or any upgrades to the existing substation, so the impacts to Energy Box was checked as a small impact. Moving on to impacts on noise and light, the following small impacts were noted. Intermittent construction noise could exceed existing ambient noise levels for short periods of time during daytime construction activities, which are potentially from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. on weekdays. Once operational, it's anticipated that the noise levels at the existing school facilities will be similar to current ambient conditions. Also, outdoor lighting is proposed for the exterior renovations at the Fairport High School around the perimeter of the new parking areas and the bus loop. Proposed lighting would be aimed downward to illuminate parking and roadway surfaces for safety and security purposes. And the last category was impacts on human health. And this is, I mentioned earlier, the grain of salt, and there was a reason that I'm mentioning this. So apparently, New York State DEC has a spill record database. And their spill record database indicated that in 2019, apparently there was some sort of a garbage spill. It's not entirely clear what it was, and an odor was released. Now, this is not an issue for this project. It was just one of these things where we had to sort of note this record as part of the seeker process. This didn't result in any remediation activity. It's just sort of one of these one-off records that, again, we had to note for the purpose of the seeker review. No potentially significant adverse environmental impacts were identified based on review of these categories. Labella recommends a negative declaration for this project based on its evaluation of the proposed project's potential environmental impacts. Thank you.
Thank you, Francis, and Labella team for answering any questions. We can jump back to the presentation. Final slide. Just again, talking about the next steps. Any further questions on seeker review process?
I can't think of anyone else. I do want to research what long-eared bats are, but other than that.
So
Appreciate the
Matt, I
thorough
do have a
review, though.
question about the funding piece for
Yep.
Proposition 2, just for the good of the group and the community. So right now, it's not fundable at all, but my understanding is it's because we've maxed out that area of aid. So just looking forward, if we wanted to know if this didn't pass by chance, what is the next opportunity, or how would we go about someday in the future funding a track? Just generally, like what time frame would we be looking at before the aid will?
So the state's rolling clock on state building aid is 5 years. So the way that works is when we look at Proposition 1, we've already maximized the building aid at the state level for Proposition 1. Site work is a category at the state level that falls under the incidental cost allowance. So the state sets two categories of cost allowances, one construction, one incidental. Construction generally means everything happening inside the buildings as a whole. Incidental includes our construction management fee, all our ancillary fees, construction management, architectural, legal, and site work. So site work falls in the incidental side of cost allowances. So really the next time funds are available to do any construction with aid in terms of site work would be 5 years from the date that the state approves this project. So if you kind of think out, go to the timeline. That's a little long-winded answer for you, but so if we go to the timeline and that entire design phase in 2024 takes place, and let's say the state comes back at the tail end of 24, early 25 approves the project, that now starts the clock for when that aid's available. So that aid really won't be available until 2030. So in order to get some aid on work at Fairport High School,
And I
at
think,
the site, for the site work.
yeah, and the other thing we've talked about at length is the fact that ideally we would be able to use some of that with other projects, right? So if we push the track down the road, that impacts a possible pool, which we all know is also a need. So I guess just highlighting that.
Yep. Yeah. Those are pieces of trying to maximize the aid as best we can, with the work that is prioritized to take place at this stage in long-range planning for the district. So it's a good question. It would push that out. You really wouldn't be able to then have approval until 2030, which then means construction's not taking place until stretch it out another year after that. So, when you think about timeline.
I know, and I guess the other thing is thinking about what would have to be done just to keep it safe, right? So I think,
So
right,
in the
we would,
meantime, you're putting money into Band-Aids.
Correct.
Where it needs to get
and I
done
know we've
eventually.
talked about this with the pool, for example. And Peter, how long have you been talking about that?
Oh, yeah, many years for the pool, and we are band-aiding it quite a bit.
Right.
500,000 this last year or so we're putting into just trying to keep it going till we can get to the next construction project.
I know it's hard to think long-term, but, putting money into things that we have to replace eventually is not.
Well, the good news is that we are poised with the timeline, and the board has made it a priority to make sure that we talk about other phases. But in order for us to get to the other phases, we need to make sure that we take care of October 12th. And then, there's other conversations of other phases. I don't want to get into those to mix it up here. But, we're going track, trying to maximize the use of our reserves to minimize the impact on our community, which is what we were able to achieve.
Yeah, and we were listening to the community as well, so.
Yeah, and that's correct. There was only one proposition, right? And then the students, community members, alumni, parents, caregivers came, and there was strong advocacy in ways that would only happen in Fairport.
Thanks.
Great, thank you. So the next two pieces, as we look forward on the board agenda would be the approval of the recommendation for the negative declaration for the seeker review, and then the proposition resolution for the two propositions to go forth for a vote on October 12th of 2023. If you want anything to add, that's it.
Unless there's questions. I know there's been lots of questions up to this point, but I know.
I had a couple other about that Proposition 1, if that's
Yeah,
okay.
of
A small question is which areas of the new construction will have air conditioning? I know we've heard that question a lot from the community.
Gosh, off the top of my head, and
Sorry
our
to interrupt, yeah.
experts from Labella that were deeply involved in the conceptual design are not here. They're actually out of country, so
Oh, okay.
I
Sorry
believe
about
it's
that.
I believe it's the library and tech wing.
Okay.
So
That's what I remember when I
from
think
what I
we've asked
remember in our
before. Yep,
meetings, yeah.
That's what I
I believe the
thought.
library and the tech.
And that would
wing.
include the 3 new classrooms being made out of the library?
Yes.
That whole area, right.
I think similar, right, to the science rooms, just trying to,
So we try to prioritize that interest of the community, and if we can't achieve it because of costs, they build for the future. So and if there are other projects, we can naturally back into that. So the plumbing, et cetera, infrastructure will be there. But the library, the tech wing, those new spaces will have renovated spaces, just like the cafeteria, LGI, and the gymnasium, instructional space. Those have air conditioning. Auditorium as well. That's being fixed this week.
I know it is, that's why I brought it up.
Thank you. And then the other one, I know I spoke with you before about it, but again, for the good of the group and the community, although Proposition 1 is not anticipated to have a tax impact, the proposition is still written to say that there could be a tax levy. And so I did ask questions about it and get an answer before, but just for the good of the group, if you could explain why it's worded that way.
Yep, so it has to be. So bond council, upon recommendation of development of proposition resolutions, that language has to be in a proposition resolution because in essence, the district is still borrowing funds. It's just being offset by state building aid. So that language has to be in proposition resolutions about the levy of a tax, in terms of how we issue debt and those different pieces.
Thanks.
Yep.
And to date, the state hasn't necessarily, they change sometimes the time frame to which they'll pay back, but they haven't necessarily left anybody hanging, right?
It would be a
Knock on wood.
an event. It
An
would be a
event,
significant event and an issue that they'd have to manage because it wouldn't just affect our school community, it would affect.
It would be statewide
Yes.
issue, right, yep.
No, I just wanted to really quick say thank you to Matt and Brett and that whole team for the work that you put in listening to the community and listening to us on the zero tax impact on Proposition 1 and the work to bring down the proposed tax on the track as it was higher. I think when we first started it, that was one of the things we heard from the community on the December referendum, and I think it shows the balance that we're trying to achieve here with doing the necessary work to make the merger successful, to make Fairport High School what it needs to be when the ninth graders come over, and also listening to our amazing students who came out and gave a lot of energy toward the track. And so just for myself, thank you for listening and for taking and for the, I know it was not an easy thing to make that work.
I would say thank you because the board provides clarity, and it wasn't good enough, and the board made it clear that we needed to go deeper and find different ways to offset the cost. And it was at 49. We were able to use different reserves. Thank you, Matt and team and your fiscal advisors to find reserves that could be easily transferred to the capital reserve fund. So we're using, our savings account. That's because the board gave us the clarity. So it's a two-way street. Thank you.
I think we're good.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think, as Matt said, we're going to move on in our agenda. So under number 4, if you're following at home, I forgot to mention this before, but you can see this agenda on board docs, and a lot of the items that we're talking about and showing are in the public content area. So you can learn all about the environmental study there as well. So, 4A, it is the resolution for a proposed capital project pursuant to the New York State Environmental Quality Review Act. And I need a motion to adopt the resolution for a proposed capital project pursuant to the New York State Environmental Quality Review Act as attached.
So moved.
Mary Caitlin?
Second.
Peter? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 6-0. Next up, I need a motion to adopt the proposition resolution calling for a special vote on October 12th, 2023 for a capital project as attached.
So moved.
Peter? Nicole?
Just a quick point on this, before we vote, I just want to point out the language, and again, this is more for the group here, I know we've all seen this, but on Proposition 2, which is the track proposition, it says, if Proposition 1 is approved, shall the board blah, blah, blah. So the important thing is that if the work in the project is not approved at the high school, the track will not happen, no matter how that vote goes. And I think that's part of our emphasis on how important the work is at the high school to get done, to support the merger and support the needs here.
The indoor learning spaces, the classrooms, and if the board chooses to adopt the resolution, Lindsay Reddig will and I will work with the team, I would say, to make sure that we're communicating that very clearly. I know she has a plan in place already if the board chooses to do that.
Thanks for bringing it up, yeah. I know we've talked about it so much.
Yeah, good point. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 6-0. Next, we have the appointment of vote personnel, which is exciting. For that October 12th vote, we already have folks that are interested in assisting us. So I do need a motion to approve the appointment of the election inspectors for the capital project vote on October 12th, 2023.
So moved.
Mary Caitlin, Brian? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And next we have policies. And I think if you tuned in earlier today, you probably heard us talking a little bit about getting through a number of policies at our meeting that we just had Monday. Wait, was that yesterday?
Yesterday.
We've been busy. So I do need a motion that the Board of Education approves the first reading of the following policies, and we're also retiring policy 2330. Again, if folks are interested in what we're talking about, you can find it right on board docs and review it for yourself. But any questions?
Yes.
yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say the retiring of 2330, we, on our policy committee voted to and have folded that into 2320, if I'm remembering correctly. So just kind of streamlining the policies is all that is.
And I just want to thank the policy committee for taking a much deeper look at the per diem. I love where you ended up there. I thought we were on one extreme, and now you've gone to a really good place where it's flexible depending on location. So I think that's much fairer to our staff and those who travel. A question on the 5640 and 7320, they're both tobacco and other types of things related. Is it possible to fold one into the other there as well?
It is not. We
We
actually
actually talked about that.
we looked into that with Harris Beach, and 5640 pertains to anyone on school campus, whereas whatchamacallit, 7320 is just for students.
Students.
Okay, well, so
Yeah.
can't make life easier there. Okay,
know,
very
I
good. No, that's fine. Thanks for looking at it then. That's all I had.
I think one policy that I just keep mulling over since the policy meeting was in regards to hiring of relatives. So I think there's a lot of nuance in there, which whether that's through policy or regulation, I would just, want to give some
Yeah,
thought to, or encourage everybody else to give thought to.
This will be, if approved, stapled, taped, I don't know what you do in your office, right on the HR leaders' bulletin board in his office, because it will speak directly to that practice. So yes, it will be regulated accordingly.
So I guess as long as, just wanted to highlight that as far as making sure the rest of the board was comfortable with the scope of what we covered in our policy part, knowing that it can be followed up with regulation, but just making sure.
Definitely put a lot of thought into that one.
Yeah.
And I say we spent the most time on it because there's that nuance of we don't want nepotism, but we don't want to lose the best candidate in the situation where somebody may happen to also be related. So how do we successfully create those situations so our students are always getting the best?
Yeah, and I think we came to a point where we feel comfortable with it, but it was one that we were really trying to make sure we weren't making light of and that we're taking that seriously. So that's why I bring it up, just to make sure everyone feels comfortable.
Which policy was that? I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the
6211.
6211. Oh, okay.
There's just so many.
Yeah, I know. I got you.
Are we good? Okay, all in favor?
Wait, did we move?
Oh, I thought we,
Okay, move.
I thought we did.
No, we didn't.
Oh,
So moved.
Second.
Mary Caitlin, Brian, we had so much conversation. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And next up, we have our 2023-24 district goals. Again, we did talk about this at the workshop earlier, so you can go back and look at that recording, but we had talked about kind of updating what we had in the past and making a few adjustments, and you will see these reflected in a variety of places across the district for this year. So I need a motion to approve the 2023-24 district goals.
So moved.
Peter,
Second.
Lisa,
If you don't mind, for emphasis, I know we tried not to discourage being repetitive, but the one thing I'd like to point out for a statement of core beliefs is, and Brian said this earlier at the workshop, that is our core beliefs. This is us informing the community, the lens through which we will make our decisions, right? But this one wasn't developed in conjunction with administrators or anybody else. This was us as a board getting together and saying, what are our core beliefs? And so I just think people should understand that's why we put it out there, so they understand the lens by which we plan on making decisions. But the other ones were done, the mission and vision and all that, that's done in conjunction with others in the school district as appropriately so.
And I know too that the wordsmithing in our last meeting seemed maybe lengthy, but I think the changes that were made were very much improved to what it was before, and just enhancing it and making it something that we all really believe in. So thank you for that time.
any other comments, thoughts? Okay, we already did motion. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 6-0. And now we are moving to our consent calendar. Before we go through and approve these, I did just, again, want to mention that people can see it if you take a look online. And there are a variety of categories and things that we are going to approve. But before we go into this general consent calendar, I just wanted to see if there were any comments or questions from the board before we go ahead and motion? No, I will just highlight that if folks are looking for policy meeting dates, they're there, in case you're wondering. I think that's about it. So I need a motion to
And
approve.
those are open to the public to attend.
Yeah.
if they want.
Yep. So I need a motion to approve the the consent calendar.
So moved.
Brian? Mary Caitlin? All in favor? Aye. 6-0. Next up, we have our programmatic consent calendar. And here we have, again, a variety of things that we'll approve altogether. Extra classroom activities, field trips, agreements for professional consultants. Before we move on that one, does anyone have any comments or questions?
I do have a quick question. We
Sure.
don't have to pull this out of the consent calendar for this, but just a question on the senior trip request. And again, I think I know the answer to this, but just for the group, seeing the cost, that is there financial aid or help available for students who cannot afford to, and are they families made aware of this?
Short answer, yes.
And Tanya's got a.
Yep, short
Yeah.
answer, yes.
Okay.
And there's opportunities to use different funding sources, whether it's reaching directly out to the travel agent or using the Joey Fund to offset the costs.
Wonderful.
Do you want to add anything to that?
Thank you.
And I know that folks do reach out, so just in previous
yeah.
experience.
Yeah, it's something that we do very well because
Yeah.
I think that it's been made a priority that, there's a cost, right? And we need to do our job to reach out. And our mental health, our support, our counselors, our administrators know who some of our families are, and we're proud to support in multiple different ways.
Okay, so now I need a motion to approve the programmatic consent calendar.
So moved.
Lisa? Seconded. Nicole? All in favor? Aye. Which then brings us to our personnel consent calendar. Wow, my eyes are going. Within here, there's instructional appointments, non-instructional appointments, athletic appointments, the agreement with our superintendent, and then there's also a revised starting salary for personnel that is not covered in a collective bargaining unit. I did want to just welcome our new Dudley principal who is here today before we go ahead and. Oh, sure. Oh, yeah, see, I'm not, after I'll thank you. But before we vote on this one, does anyone have any comments? And I will say again, thank you, Doug, for getting ahead of the game on hiring earlier this past academic year so that we aren't approving 1 million people at the last minute. So thank you.
We have some colleagues that are not experiencing that luxury, and we've also been in that pot too. So my hats off to you and your team and all the administrators and hiring committees that participated in that.
Absolutely. Okay, I need a motion to approve the personnel consent calendar.
So moved.
Brian,
Second.
Lisa, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We
Now we can
have a Dudley
congratulate her.
principal. Congratulations. So this is from your counterpart at Dudley. Wanted to put that out there just to, yeah. She's at cheerleading practice, but we wanted to make sure that we're rooting. Yeah, never. Yeah.
Very sweet. I was just texting with her today. We're going to connect first thing tomorrow, so I'm excited. That's very sweet. Thank you.
Congratulations.
I'm thrilled to be a part of this community, and I'll definitely make you all proud.
You can leave now.
My eyes are also getting a little blurry.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Welcome aboard.
Okay, with that, we are going to enter into an executive session. Just for folks that are waiting and watching at home, we will reconvene just to adjourn. So we won't be doing any more business after that. And I need a motion to enter into executive session for matters pertaining to the job duties, performance, and appointment of individuals in collective bargaining units for the matters pertaining to pending and current litigation. And we are inviting Superintendent Provenzano to be with us.
So moved.
Lisa?
That's okay.
Ryan,
Track with you.
all in favor? Aye. Thank you.